Thank you, Lisa. Okay, I'm already hungry. My breakfast has already, and so now we're gonna go ahead and introduce the first panel. And we've got the food and beverage gurus coming up, people that know how to feed your stomach and feed your soul. So the amazing panel is gonna be moderated by Darren Marshall, the CEO of Tea Makers. So let's give it up.
Well, hey, welcome everyone. We have a great panel today. Rudy from pFriem Beer. Junea from Brazi Bites. And Nikki from Hot Mama Salsa. And so, welcome everyone. We want to talk about operating, growing businesses in Oregon and the ease of doing that. And how we're going to all retire and become bazillionaires sometime in the first 5 years of operating our business. Or not, as the case may be. So I thought maybe we could start with, and maybe Nikki, if you don't mind, sort of put you on the spot. You've created Hot Mama Salsas, which is such an amazing brand. What did you think you were getting into versus what have you actually discovered in the process?
Yeah, that's a big story. Thanks, Darren. So when I started Hot Mama Salsa, I knew nothing about the food industry at all. And it was 2008, so there weren't a lot of accelerators out there to learn, about the food industry and running a food business. I thought I was just going to make people some good salsa and introduce my new community in Oregon to what Mexican salsa really was, not chunky red tomato salsa with 3 different heat levels. So I had no idea that I was also going to end up managing people and having to figure out how to find money all over the place and learn how to do branding and marketing. So the journey really has been that I've gotten to learn an incredible amount of things about business and really hone skills in areas where I was interested in, and then hopefully learn how to delegate the areas I wasn't so good at. But yeah, it was nothing at all what I thought it was going to be, in a good way.
And Rudy, how's that different for you?
I took it from the right side. For us, it's very much the same thing. I think the thing that we, the big sort of aha for us and what we really got into versus what we thought was that we understood early that we need to start running a business instead of just making a product, making beer. In our industry, and many of you guys are the same way, I'm sure. There's a lot of creative romantics in the room, right? And you need to have innovative, creative romantics that have a vision that starts something and that give their passion and their energy, their science, whatever it may be, to it. But the sooner you can really kind of marry that with, hey guys, we're also we're mainly running a business here. And all the things that come from that, right? All the, sales, marketing, operations, logistics, finance, all those things. I think to me that was the big learning and our realization. Thankfully, we were lucky to have some good people in the room. They made us realize that early in the process. But for us, that was the big transition was going from a product and creating something mindset to bringing hey, we're running a business, first and foremost. How can we do both without making trade-offs, without having to be forced to make the false choice of, are you going to do the business thing or are you going to do the right kind of product thing? So it's been developing that balance that has been the one issue that we learned pretty early, that it was very, very different than when we got started with the business.
And Junea, you didn't just create a product and a brand, you sort of created a category.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. For those who don't know, Brazi Bites, so I founded the company in 2010, so I've been in the food industry for 14 and a half years now. And Brazi Bites is a frozen foods company operating in the better for you space. And we're known for the Brazilian cheese bread. Lots of folks in the room hopefully have enjoyed my products over the years. Thank you. Today, Brazi Bites offers a range of gluten-free, award-winning products distributed in 15,000 grocery stores nationwide. I share that because my journey in the food industry was very specific to the category and the niche that my product was a fit. So I operate a frozen foods company. When I launched the company, I did not know much about the industry, similar to Nikki here, but I love the product. I had this deep belief in the product and the opportunity to bring to U.S. grocery. I grew up in Brazil, and I thought that the product had merit, that people would love it as much as I did. But I did not understand the industry. I did not understand what was going to play out over the course of 14 years. And I think that was a good thing, looking back, being a first-time entrepreneur. We were very focused on the product and the beauty of that and how to bring it to grocery. Being a frozen foods brand, we were very specific in our path and our journey for this company was in retail. So the brand is a retail brand in grocery stores, right? So that was very specific to my journey. And over the last 14 years, it's unfolded the growth one step at a time, right? And it's almost like all those things, kind of this onion that gets peeled. You start very small with your vision in your local market. And as you grow and unfold, things were coming up and we were learning along the way. And it's been a fantastic journey. Not without its challenges, but a very rewarding one.
So, we've all gone through the process of developing products, brands, production facilities, all of the pricing architectures, customer maps, understanding who our consumers are, all of that sort of stuff that defines what the brand is all about. But then there's the goddamn hard work of getting it done and the execution. Which one's more important? Brand or execution?
Well, I like hearing what Junea said about how specific her intention was for building her company. And I think that talking to a room of entrepreneurs, it merits mention that there are many ways to build a company and many companies to build. And so that really is your work, right? Is to figure out what kind of company do you want to build. And in that is what kind of brand are you building? And that brand is going to inform your execution. So I don't know that you can separate the two. I mean, I think the brand usually should come first, and the idea of what you're building and what messaging and what you're bringing into the world, but that always should also inform your execution.
I'll add to that. I think that when you look at businesses that you might admire that are scaling, they're like, well, that brand and that company is working really well. Likely a lot of these components are working together in sync. Right? You have a great product, a great brand, the team executes, the distribution is right, so that's not very helpful, but it's the reality of the game. But to me, when you're starting out, I think that, I like to place the biggest importance, and I will speak for experience on what worked at Brazi Bites. We started with product first. Let's make sure that the product is outstanding, that it has a reason to be. And then very coupled with that is the consumers. So a lot of times people ask me, how did you guys do it? What did you focus on? I always share this, and it's a simplified way. But we became in the early days obsessed with the consumer and who was buying the product. So how they were buying it, why they were buying it, at what time of day they were enjoying it, who were the family members, and what stores do you buy the types of products, right? So it's obsession with that because there are thousands and thousands of food companies out there with amazing products and beautiful makers behind them that never get discovered. So I'm like, that is my problem, right? Because I'm launching a beautifully made product that I am passionate and I believe. What if I never get discovered? right? And in grocery, you have to have speed of discovery because you have to maintain your shelf space. And so we were very obsessed on unlocking that piece and figuring out who was buying it with this beautiful product. So I think that the branding, the positioning, and all those other things get built around the consumer and the product. They become very easy to figure out, right? Brand positioning, branding, what that looks like, you're serving your consumer with that beautiful product that you created. And of course, guys, execution, close second, because you gotta execute the heck out of it in this industry. We're making products, we gotta make them well, consistently, and deliver consistently, so.
It's also really circular, as you were talking about that. Like, no one ever creates the perfect brand or product or price architecture or any of that stuff and then just goes and executes it. It's not linear. Like, you do it, you
Correct.
mess it up, you screw it up, you fix it, you go back, you get something else wrong, and then it's always that circular economy, if you will, of bringing it together. What about you, Rudy?
I think there's also a time scale. To me, the x-axis on this question is time. I think, brand is the beginning, right? No one starts a company with like, okay, well, here's like the team I'm going to build and how we're going to do like the process and execution. The idea is the start, and that's usually a founder or like a novel business model or something. Yeah. So to me, and that's that beginning is hopefully what develops into like the brand of the company. And then you ask yourself like, what does a brand mean? Brand is not just a logo or a color or a typeface, right? Brand is culture. It's how we talk about the company when we talk about other people, how we treat our suppliers, how we treat our customers, our distributors, all this. That's the brand, right?
Values.
It's not just a pretty face or a cool logo. It's values. So you start with that because there's usually a founder involved. One of you guys, some of you guys out there are that one person. You're our Josh pFriem, right? I'm not Josh pFriem. I do the execution part. And that's actually the time scale, right? And we have Sonia here, who's our CFO, another co-owner of the company. And this evolution of becoming, being very brand focused at the beginning, but then really turning your focus on execution, that is the crux of it all. That is scale, that is ultimately success. All the things that you desire as founders, very few of those come from the brand. The brand is the seed. The execution is the water. And then something maybe grows if you're lucky and there's enough sun shining. So I think that's how I think about, you need both, but you need one at the beginning, one later, and something grows, hopefully, if you do it right.
That's a great soundbite. The seed is the brand and the water is the execution. I mean, from our perspective at Smith, Smith is a beautiful brand, and I thought that I was getting a beautiful brand with a beautiful set of systems and mechanisms and people and processes and all that sort of stuff. But it's almost like an iceberg, right? What you see at the top, but it won't float unless you've got the executional discipline underneath all of that. So true. Where are we going next? Consumers. Junea, you were talking about consumers and being obsessed. I love that, having a consumer obsession or an obsession with consumers, because at the end of the day, if you're not getting it right there, you're not getting it right anywhere. One of the things that we learned at Smith is what people say they want and what they actually want are very different things. What people say they want often is very rational because it's the thing that they should say. But what they actually want is something emotional. It tastes great. It's something that I share with my family, brings family together, whatever it might be. But there's that idea of what I say and what I do are very, very different, which has always been learned the hard way. Junea, what have you learned about consumers that it's really interesting?
Well, I can dive into kind of one thing that I learned, and I think you think about to find the unlock of what can open up a different path for, a path of growth for your company. I think anytime that you're bringing a product to market that perhaps is from a different country or from a different region, or something that like you're very familiar with, but the market you're launching is not, which was my case, bringing a product from Brazil to the US market that didn't exist before. You make assumptions about how people will consume the product, what kinds of people will consume the product, etc. And so when we launched Brazi Bites, we realized that the Brazilian cheese bread had a natural attribute, as it was a naturally gluten-free product that came with the product. And we realized that that was a very valuable attribute when we were growing the company, and there was a need. And so that was a huge unlock for us. It's not a gluten-free specific product, but it's naturally gluten-free. Then we felt like we learned that the consumers were really latching on to that, and that was it was an important entry point into the household through that need. Through a product that's delicious, and we could convert the household. So that was a big learning for us in the beginning, that we did not know that, because in Brazil, in South America, it has nothing to do with the gluten-free attribute. Here in the US, it became a huge unlock for us, and one of the biggest reasons why we were able to grow at this scale and convert the household and become a bigger company. So this is just a good example to share with you guys on how, you know, when you're bringing a new product, maybe it's a flavor that is not commonly, you know, enjoyed, and it's something very unique and innovative. Listen to your consumers, and they're gonna kind of show you the way to unlock your growth, and be open to that. Because we sometimes live in a bubble and we make assumptions, but let the consumer guide you on what's right for your business, and then build on that.
Rudy, what about you? You know, it's a funny question, because I think there's this you know, industrial answer to that question, and I think there's like the nuance which I think you touched on great, Junea, and to me it's like you can't ask the customer. If you're asking the customer, you're gonna fall into the trap Darren described earlier, right? You need to really observe the customer, have them tell you with their buying patterns. You know, and, you know, if you have a storefront, you learn a lot from them through storefronts and through direct observation. But I think once you start asking people a question of, you know, do you like this or that, that's dangerous. We don't read any market research at pFriem. We understand what our buyers are buying through our grocery channels. You know, we buy all of the data from the grocery aggregators to understand, you know, what we're doing, what our velocity is. We have never made a single product portfolio decision ever based on market data, for example, or consumer research or everything else. Why? You know, anybody could read that consumer research, you know, buy that research paper, and to me, once you start relying on those kind of things, you are losing touch with your consumers. You have probably gotten too big. Maybe, you know, you're not in this room anymore because you've grown so much. But at our level, at our scale, it's about real local understanding of what consumers are doing, and not buying research, not looking at research, and not making product decisions because, ooh, you know, the pale blonde category is growing at, you know, by, you know, at 12%, while the IPA category is down 4%. We never made those kind of decisions, and we never will, because that's not the brand, right? And again, that's our channel. That's how we operate. Is we believe we know the answer, and people will come, and they'll figure it out based on the strength of our brand.
It also, data is important for anyone who knows me, and you know how important data is in my life. But data is a lagging indicator, not a leading indicator. Understanding what consumers don't know that they're doing yet is something that is very difficult to articulate.
I think that's a brilliant point. You need to understand who's buying your stuff and who's not, and where, and what wholesalers are doing, because there's a lot of performance management to do in the channel, right? Based on what's happening in certain places and with certain products, you know, all those things. But in terms of a forecast, the future, where it's going, part of what gets you guys in this room and the reason you're here, right, is you know where your segment is going. You know that you have the thing that people want before they know it, and I think you have to trust that. You can't be, you know, blind to reality. Don't talk yourself. This is not an excuse to just like drink your own Kool-Aid, but there's a difference of trusting your vision and your feeling about this specific segment, and, you know, being beholden to some forecast data from somebody else who doesn't know.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this group of people is different brands, different categories, different levels of development. But the commonality is that everything is growing, and through a lot of different factors. Sheer hard work is also probably common across all. Nikki, what's been the growth driver? If you were to drill it down to certain tactics or disciplines, or what's been the secret sauce in your salsa?
For Hot Mama Salsa? Well, like we're talking about customers, it really has been customer demand. I mean, our model has always been a little bit different in that we didn't start out to grow a food company to sell it and, be a national brand. We really started a food company to feed our community and be working in our community and create jobs in our community and work with our local farms. And so kind of growth was never the intention for Hot Mama Salsa. It was sustainability. But because we have a passion for chili peppers and for Mexican food, we kept bringing products to market that we loved and we wanted to share. And when we brought our chips to the market, the demand and velocity was just so huge that spurred the need to really grow the company to a bigger size if we wanted to be able to make more chips. And I can't give up the actual making and manufacturing, so we had to, really, that's been what's driving our growth lately.
So would you say that it's expanding the portfolio or building an integrated system to go to market? Which one's more important in your case?
Well, I mean, I have to build the integrative system, but the creative desire to expand the portfolio is always there. It also has always kind of been my driving force to expand where I am in both product lines and sales channels. So even, we do have a strong local and regional grocery presence. I also look at that and say, these are the partners we want to work with, right? We want to be in specialty grocery, so how do we capture more of that? And part of it has been with expanding product line.
So when you think about growth strategy is not just you may enter with one product in one channel, but then you go to an adjacent category, adjacent products, and then adjacent channels, and all of a sudden your total addressable market is 4 times bigger than what you started with. Cool. Junea, what's the sauce? What's driven your phenomenal growth?
I'll share like 2 things for me that I think if I look back and it's like, what were the 2 main drivers that allowed this company to scale? And again, going back to the in sync thing, I think it's important. But if there were 2 kind of themes that I look back, are the theme number 1 is the understanding of the category where we operate. In our case, the frozen section. Right? And so how does the freezer operate in terms of everything from like back end to manufacturing to distribution to the retail buyers to which retailers are really moving the majority of frozen foods in the country to what kinds of consumers buy frozen foods. So like laser focus on understanding the category. We have, nearly 20 people running the business outside of manufacturing today, and all 20 of us are laser focused in the frozen category, and we own that space. The sales directors, they are frozen obsessed, and so we're just really laser focused on that, and that allowed us to be best in class in our space, and there's so much room to grow within that specific category that you can build a large company in any category that you operate without branching out. And so being laser focused and becoming expert was really a huge deal for us. And the second thing is getting exposure when we were ready to execute. So Brazi Bites, we were on Shark Tank in 2015. And it was a great time for us to go. We had the back end, we had the beginning and the principles of the brand established and built, all the foundational pieces that we've been talking about here on understanding your consumers, the execution, the brand, the beginning, sort of the understanding of the frozen category. And we got a massive, massive exposure at a time when we could back that exposure and execute and sort of own that growth that was ahead of us. And so it doesn't have to be Shark Tank for you guys. It is, a great vessel and one that I love, but it's not available to everyone, and maybe you don't want that. There's many ways to get exposure when you're ready for it in your local market. Social media now, you can go viral, you can do all kinds of things that you want, but I think getting the exposure at the right time when you're ready to execute has been a huge, help on our growth.
Junea, when you look at your business, what part of the country are you most developed in now?
So we're a national brand with, distribution from coast to coast. One thing that we look at is where we're moving the most products. So distribution, because we work with national accounts such as Whole Foods and Kroger and stuff like that, it's not very dissimilar. But here in the Northwest, because we're a Northwest-based company and we spend many more years just developing this local market, is one of our strongest market, despite the fact that the Northwest is lower density and the volume of grocery here is much lower than places in the East Coast. But because of the nature of the Latin-inspired of my company, we do really well in Southeast, and we do just really well in Northeast and also in Texas. Texas like cheese.
Yeah.
Texas, we're still why? I don't know, they just like cheese bread.
It's really interesting that the importance of getting the local market right is just so critical. For brands like ours, our partnership with, started with Steve and Stan Amy at New Seasons, long time ago, decades ago. And that friendship then turned into, okay, well, how do we use this, little local chain to be able to become an incubation area and grow and fail and experiment and do something different and again and again and again. And then you take that and go to the next guy, and then the next guy, and then the next region, and all of a sudden you've got a national brand that happens to be more developed in parts that are thousands of miles away that you would have never had imagined.
100% critical.
The importance of getting it right in your neighborhood is so key. You guys, Rudy, have seen such amazing growth as well. So what would you attribute what's been the secret sauce, the growth drivers of pFriem?
I think, a lot of it is, I think it's a very philosophical answer I'll give you, which is, I think it's the belief that we'll never sell the business and that we'll always run it, and let us to make decisions that have very long-term time horizon. We play the long game with everything. We've never run the business like we wanted to grow it and sell it, or I've never even thought about that, right? We even talk about that, and we're 13 years in, so this philosophy of it's a generational business. That's why we put Josh's name on the building. When we were talking about what to name our little silly brewery in Hood River, we decided to put Josh's name in it, call it pFriem Family Brewers, because that's an ode to these multi-generational breweries from Europe, right? In Europe, you either named your company after the founding brewmaster or the town that you were in, and that place was going to be there for 400 years. So we have always thought about the business as it's our baby, and we are making very long-term decisions. We never act with the next week or the next month or the next year in our mind. It's always what's the right thing for the brand, where are we going, and committing to a long-term plan. And that's just led us to treat our wholesalers better and create systems to make sure that our wholesalers are happy and they have the right amount of inventory. And it's led us to build these business processes that I think some of our peers didn't build because they didn't think of the long game. They just thought of, now or next year. And we've always thought about very, very, very long-term horizon, which has led us to build bricks, pieces of this company, earlier and I think better than, some folks have, which has led us to, run a better business, and also when it's gotten tougher, right? I mean, I don't know, the space you guys are in, but the beer business is in a horrible shape, right? Last 4 or 5 years, the business has been down, craft beer has been down about 4% a year by volume. So, there's a lot of demographic factors, and, so the business is changing underneath us. So it's gotten a little tougher, and I think as inspiration for you guys, the tougher it gets in your market, it's not necessarily worse, for you, right? It could also be, it's a challenge that if you meet that challenge, tougher market conditions could lead to really good outcomes for you. But you gotta be realistic, you've gotta be self-aware, and you have to be, real with yourself, and your team about what's happening in the market. A lot of folks have let the market change underneath them, and they have not adapted, right? So that self-awareness and adaptation, especially in tough times, if you play the long game and you think about these long-term horizons, those could all work together well and serve as an opportunity to, to grow. So that's how we've grown. We haven't necessarily open new stuff. We've just done it.
It was interesting. I had lunch yesterday with one of the folks who was part of the founding team of Smith, and he informed me, which I didn't know, that the plan was, well, we'll build it, and then 5 years we'll cash it out, and somebody will buy it, and off we go. Then Steve would retire again for the 3rd time or something like that. And it just doesn't happen. And we hear about things like Siete Foods, $1.2 billion, but that's a long time horizon and a long bit of work. How have you guys thought about exits? I mean, is that something that's on the horizon, or is this, like you say, Rudy, a long-term game?
Well, I really appreciate Rudy talking about the long game, because I think that is something that really gives your business strength if you look at things like a long game. And you're right, it is how you create better relationships with your suppliers and things like that. And I think it is also how we're gonna build more sustainable business in Oregon, is if we want to be here in Oregon and we want to keep our business in Oregon and run our business in Oregon. And I've always viewed Hot Mama Salsa as my protest to big food, ag, and the industry that's designed and built to crush small producers. And when I started, my whole goal was like, can I make a handmade product and actually sell it in the grocery market? Will that work? Is that something that will be allowed? And there are spaces that will allow for it. So if we can continue to strengthen those kind of companies and those relationships, in this time when everything is consolidating, distribution is consolidating, grocery is consolidating, and it's just making it harder and harder to do, make a product with local agriculture and local labor. I think that's, where real strength can come.
The way to do that, from my observations, has been, A, have a really good but highly differentiated product, and charge a premium for it. Like, make sure that you've got enough leverage, financial leverage, to be able to do all the things that you need to be able to do. And you can't do that without having it being like really unique and really different and delicious like yours.
Yeah, and you can't continue to do that if your goal is to sign on with all the big distributors and big grocery, because the competition won't allow it.
Yeah. We've only got a few minutes left. There's a lot of time and energy and heart that has been put into growing these businesses. One piece of advice for all these budding entrepreneurs, Junea, why don't you start?
All right, I'll take it. I would say one thing that's sort of that's guiding me that I would like to share with you guys. It's like, understand and be okay with the fact that your product, your business, is not for everyone. You will, be rejected by consumers in your journey. You'll be rejected by buyers, and you for sure will be rejected by investors. It is okay not to fit an investor criteria. Just find your tribe, find the people who your product are for, and find, trust your judgment. You know best. and build on that. I think that's kind of a good way to think about business and guide yourself, because building a company from the ground up is full of rejections, and perhaps it's your first time. You might start hearing all those no's and think that they know better, but trust that you know best, you invented this, and just find your people, and you can build a nice business that way.
Okay, well, if I have to give you one piece of advice as an entrepreneur, I'm going to tell you to take care of your mental health first. And do not think that you can work like a mad person and sustain that. And I want to just speak as being a woman in business. Just know that you're always going to be expected to be more calm, you're always going to be expected to be more honest, and you're always going to be expected to be more giving than your male counterparts. So find the way that you can replenish yourself and separate your actual being from your business being, so that you keep healthy and can be a strong leader.
So smart. Amazing. I've got just a quick one, and I touched on it earlier. I think it's about self-awareness. You know, it's easy to kind of get into your head in these jobs. A lot of these jobs, you know, the higher you go, the lonelier it is. I think you guys have to realize you have to also be very self-aware about what's happening in your business, what's happening with yourself, and make sure you check in with yourself, but are realistic about, you know, facing tough decisions, facing, you know, dark truths that happen, you know, in day-to-day life and in the markets. It's hard out there, but if you're self-aware about how that's affecting you, what's happening in your company, and what you're really doing, you're going to be able to make decisions and see, you know, intercept problems before they get too difficult. So listen to yourself.
It's interesting that they're all human, right? It's all very emotional. I have one other. It's a lot of work. So you got to surround yourself with the people that you want to be on the bus with. And if you have someone who shouldn't be on the bus, you got to get them off the bus. And you got to get them off fast, or in the right disciplined approach, because when you're going into the battles that we all go into, you've got to have the people around you who you can trust. Nikki, Junea, Rudy, everyone, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful morning.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.